Thank you for attending this live session where we're actually celebrating quite a big milestone of, well, for the school, but I think also just from a executive leadership and development perspective. Over the next hour, I think we're going to share some very some very interesting insights, and just not just a special welcome for those attending the session, and for those watching maybe the recording, but also for the past participants, and what I would refer to not just now as ELM, but also friends of the school, for being comfortable to come back and share some of their journey around how it's been, for them post the programs, firstly on the programs, but also then post the programs, about how they've implemented the learnings. That being said, you would see in the chat already, there's a Q&A function and there's a chat. Please do share with us where you're joining from, what program you've done. And if you're joining us and you haven't done a program yet, please feel free to also share what program you might be interested in doing. In addition to that, we've also got the Q&A section. So please feel free to also, as we proceed, to put any questions into the comment or into the Q&A section, and then as we proceed, it is going to be moderated. We will be referring to that throughout our discussion, but then also we'll hopefully have time at the end to also specifically look at a few questions that has come through. We are going to record this session, so just please be aware of that. And again, from a recording perspective, also it just makes it a bit more, again, inclusive and broadly applicable for those obviously interested that couldn't join us live today. I think most of you would, when you subscribe to this, and I'll talk about the panelists now, but just a little bit about myself. I'm Jason Hamilton. You would have seen my profile on the invite, but I've been involved with Saïd Business School now for the last 5 or 6 years. Um, I've worked in various capacities, from a program design and program delivery perspective. And I'm also an alum. I've also attended some in person, but also a few online programs. So I've definitely well entrenched within the benefits, and also from the other side of the fence, seeing the learnings, and seeing how the mechanisms behind the scenes actually work. So I'll feed in some of this perspective also as we proceed. As I said, I've got the honor today to host this session and facilitate the discussion, but I think importantly, we're also here to celebrate a really big milestone, with 50,000 um, Oxford online education alumni being achieved, and which is really a significant number. And I think for me, and the significance of that is almost more, or I'll share why I think it's so significant. Is I remember literally the other day, which is maybe 1 or 2 years back, when we celebrated 25,000. And so again, doubling that in a relatively short period of time. But then pre that, and I don't know the exact date, but I think roughly around 2020 is when everybody decided online will be a good exploration or expansion of the business school's reach, how quickly that's also been reached. So for me, what I've seen is just the development that's taken place, and how really the world has how much needed programs like this is. And I know there's been various evolutions now taking place around this, where online or virtual programs has developed to become very engaging, very interactive, and there's various hybrid versions of that as well. But it's a wonderful way to access high quality thought leadership in a very digestible way, because of the way the platforms run. But I think, and we'll touch on this as we talk through our panelists, and how they approach their journey, how accessible it has become, and in many cases I think a reintroduction to being a scholar, or potentially pursuing more academic work, or just brushing up on professional skills. And I think for me, what is clearly standing out from this is always the diversity we get on each of our programs. It's a globally diverse cohort. All the cohorts we've hosted, and you normally have representation from really north of 15, 20, even 30 different geographical locations being represented per program. So again, from that perspective, the reach of that is just so significant. Now, it is true you'll find this on an on-campus program as well, but I think the uniqueness is it's probably even more diverse from an online perspective because of the accessibility. So for me, the access is so important. And again, from my perspective, I think from executive education, where knowledge resides, where how important information is, and also how important a support structure is, it becomes such a this is such a good example of how more inclusive education can become, and what platform it provides for discussions to take place. And this is, I think, a theme that we'll also explore as we move into and talk to our panelists today. I see there was a comment that the chat doesn't work, but I think the Q&A hopefully does work. So we will touch on that as well. We're joined by three, and it was very difficult, I guess, to select three past participants from 50,000 past participants. But I think hopefully we'll have many more of these, and we can continue these discussions post this. But again, thank you for all your time as well. Jordan, Marquis, thank you for joining us. Each of you, I think, have a very unique story to tell. And I really think we'll also just talking through your background, why you did the program that you chose, and how you implemented the learnings post that, and how you found your experience. I think will definitely help the audience gain some perspective, but also gain some insight into the real value of executive education. There is a few points I also want to make, but I think again, it's probably best to hear this directly from you guys. I know as we maybe the first time you talk, just you can maybe, I know there's an introduction already done about your profiles, but you can maybe just introduce yourself and give a short little background. But I really want to make this as interactive and as best interactive and engaging as possible. It's also great to see. I see there's a few very familiar names in the chats coming through. So it's great to see a part of my ex-students also joining us today. So welcome, and obviously a warm welcome for those that I don't know. I think the first question I want to maybe just pose, and again we might jump around slightly, is just to touch on from a panelist perspective. Maybe Jordan, I can come to you first. Just a brief introduction, and then maybe just from your perspective, what made you choose Saïd, and maybe online, and maybe just a broad question: how did you experience that? And we can take the conversation from there.
Thank you for the introduction, Jason. Yeah, look, I spent the last 10 years working in tourism and entertainment, working at trampoline parks and an amusement park, and now I'm at what we call an outdoor farming adventure area. I wanted to do Oxford for credibility and for confidence. It was always a dream of mine. The accent probably gives away that I grew up in Australia. And I know my family's quite proud that I achieved it. But for me, I spent a lot of time working with P&Ls, turning around underperforming business units. I didn't have a financial background, and you could do things a lot, but if by going through this, I gained a lot of confidence and a great bunch of people that I've leveraged off ever since, and friendships I've made for life. It was a wonderful ecosystem. At the time I did it, jump in. We're in the process of selling the business to private equity, which went through successfully. So I had some significant time constraints, and it worked quite well for me. And a lot of the learnings I took from it helped me put together my part of what formed the due diligence for the buyout. So in a nutshell, that's what I got out of it, and the timings.
I'm going to come back to one of the points you've made, but I think just in the interest of time also, let's maybe if I can maybe ask you a similar question around sort of why the program, and then maybe just your experience on it, and yeah, how did you experience it, and then ultimately also maybe briefly just apply the learnings post.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason, for the intro. Yeah, like you did say, my name is Mongalengani. I'm a mining engineer. I've about 12 years industry experience, most of which has been quite operational and technical. And then towards me studying the executive finance program with Saïd Business School, I had to look for a program that more aligns with my vision and also the trajectory that I would want to take my career into. And when I looked around the market, Saïd was quite fit for what I really wanted. And the program, quite interesting, very interactive, very demanding, with good benefits, of course. I also managed to learn quite a lot in the spaces of valuation, which I could easily apply into my workplace because I often have to determine values of different projects and see if at all they will benefit the business or not. And those are some of the decisions that we really have to make or feed into my leadership. And it has been quite beneficial, me learning through these programs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Maki, any comments from your side? I'm going to keep the question probably as open as that, and then there's a few things obviously I want to tease out from each of you as we progress. But let's hear some initial thoughts from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first and foremost for the opportunity to be able to share my story. Mark Allen, I'm actually based in Los Angeles, despite the background in San Francisco. I am in California. And, a large part, I did the strategic management executive program. And one of the key drivers for me wanting to do the program had to do with I felt that there was a skills gap. I was moving into different transitions of leadership. However, I felt that there were certain things missing. And really kind of reviewing the curriculum, the rigor. For example, there was an executive finance module. And much of my experience, I have close to 20 years experience in business development. And so that really has nothing to do with finance. And in order to complete the course and finish the program, you have to go through the module. And I really do think that being able to kind of put myself through the rigor of doing something that's kind of out of my orientation or my comfort zone, in addition to getting deeper insight into what real strategy is. There were a couple of times, Jason, you and I kind of talked about what real strategy is versus goal setting and planning. And, it was one of the bigger topics that we kind of talked about. It really kind of enriched the way in which I thought about business. And I think that was really one of the pivotal reasons why I decided to not only choose this particular program, but the rigor of Oxford really resonated through everything that I went through in the coursework. So it was definitely challenging, and it really kind of stretched my perspective from a leadership aspect. So really great coursework and experience overall.
A follow-up question or something I want to maybe tease out, and this is just something that came to mind now, is that at least between the audience we have here, or between the three of you, the programs you did were very different in that they're all online, and they all had discussion forums taking place where you can interact with your fellow participants, and there was various live sessions. But the difference is that I think Jordan, yours were the executive finance one over a 6 week period, and I know Maki, you decided to do the stack program, or which is a 6 month learning journey, which was the strategic management executive program, which really threads together leadership, strategy, and finance. And again, just from a commitment perspective, I think I want to sort of maybe just touch on. I'll start with you and just sort of. I think I have insight into why you chose that, but just that 6 month commitment, um, how you thought about that and how you navigated that, and then I'll come to I'll Jordan and I'll come to you guys and also just talk about it, get your sights on what worked or what didn't work for you from the sort of 6 week format.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great question. You think about investment, right? Because you still have a full-time job to work, right? And the rigors of work in and of itself, to commit yourself to a program of this caliber, there's an investment not only financially, but just personally. And so there was a lot of thought that was kind of put into really kind of transitioning and taking on something like this. It's I believe well over a decade since the last time I've been in a formal, leadership or educational program. So I put a lot of thought into it. I think this 6 month journey was probably more appealing to me because I really did feel that given the content that was being reviewed, the necessary transformation that I was looking for would occur over a period of time. And so I really didn't want it to kind of be this, I just downloaded a couple of videos and read through a couple of PowerPoints, and here I am. I know more about the subject. The time that I had to kind of share with the global community, the time that, I was able to kind of engage with yourself and Akana, who really kind of helped me sort through all of the different topics that I thought I knew about, to be quite honest. You read enough leadership and management books, you think you kind of know everything. And this program just takes it to a different level. And so I do feel that the time commitment over 6 months, the journey in and of itself and how it kind of transformed my perspective was extremely impactful. And so I really kind of felt that it was necessary, and it was one of the reasons why I chose the program.
Maybe Jordan, maybe let's come to you. And I know, like I said, probably a very similar journey, but maybe just hear your thoughts on your sort of practical experience from your program.
Yeah, very, very similar to what my colleague said. The conversations that were had have led to friendships years later. I recognized that I had a blind spot in finance, both educationally and in practice. Had been out of education for 7 years. Anything like this, I won't lie, I probably didn't appreciate just how rigorous it would be. That first week was a wake-up call. So fair play to anyone who's done it or is about to do it. You have been warned. And it was a solid investment of time. I make no secret, I was working on this 5-6 hours a day. And it's more, you don't know what you didn't know until you find out you don't know it. I don't know if I've worded that eloquently, but it was the depth of the course. I thought I was reasonably well prepared, and yeah, it was a wake-up call. But what I'm very thankful I got, and one that's helped me considerably since.
I mean, before I go to I think it's an interesting point you make around. I refer to it as the leadership journey, but I think you can refer to it, I guess, as a wake-up call. I think also it's just part of leadership development and getting comfortable with yourself and building that confidence. Also about being comfortable to not know everything, and how do you navigate that. So one of the things that, and I think I say this in most as the programs close, but what I find very insightful is no matter which program it is, um, there's something new to learn. But I find it very interesting how very experienced senior executives, um, find certain aspects of the program very challenging, or new elements very challenging, and how they react to that, which in itself is a leadership development area, especially when you have to reflect about yourself, your own leadership style, etc. And especially when something new is put on the table, that uncomfortableness with that. And again, it comes out naturally, but it's for me, it's a big takeaway always. But I guess the conclusion is that you always see this arc taking place, where at the end, when you've gained the more confidence, I guess, when you look back, you're in a definitely in a transformed position than what you were at the start. But you can only reach that point once you've gone through it. So I know this is not always possible, but I find it fascinating to also explore with people, if they had to do the program again, how differently they would actually approach the same program, and how much you can actually get out of that, because the content actually is so rich. But I think this is the point most of you have made. Thanks for that, Jordan. Um, a question I want to throw back to I think the rest of you too, but I'll start with MM. Is there anything you would kind of, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time before you actually started your program? Is there any advice you would give yourself, or then I guess anybody else starting a new program?
Thanks for that. Thanks a lot for that question, Jason. Yeah, the advice that I would give for anybody who's interested in a program is just to be prepared for a shift. It may call for adjusting your work schedules, you're adjusting your free time, ensuring that you accommodate as much time as possible and dedicate as much time as possible into your studies, to ensure that you cover as much as possible, and always try by all means to stay ahead. Good thing about these programs, I can speak of the finance program. You'd have your material loaded well ahead. You'll be able to know exactly what's next. So even if it means that you do your own research before the actual week schedule starts for whatever program that is within that period, I would advise one to do that. So most importantly, you'd have to test your time management skills to ensure that within whatever limited time, and we all have 24 hours, whatever limited time you have to find a way to squeeze in the time and put in more effort. And indeed, it will be worth all the effort. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks for that. And I think time management is an interesting one, but I also think it's around, and I guess this is a sort of maybe a point to make around. I do find that the content that's provided is normally quite rich. I think there's a lot of additional reading that can be done, and there's that balance also around working through the content and knowing when's enough to get through the program and what is stuff you want to come back to post. I think you can only do so much work over a 6 week period, and I think that flexibility is also very, very important. um, and I know this is a comment I always make, but the grade doesn't matter that much, because executive education is about immersing yourself. Whether you 50% to pass, if you get more than that, you pass the program successfully. You don't have to get 100. You're taking the knowledge on board, you can work with that. And I think some of you is testament to that, but this is broader than just that. Any grade you get is what you do with the program and the learnings post that. It becomes important. And I know some programs grade very, very strict. And again, we've seen some great success. Again, pass or fail is kind of where you need to be, but it's about that application and the interpretation. So I think that's a great point, that too, about getting that balance right. um I know we touched on
Jason.
the time commit. Sorry, yeah, okay.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of make a point because you reminded me of that first or second week. Many people joining the program, I'm sure, are high achievers. Otherwise, I don't think that this is the program that you actually start with. And so the realization of not getting 100% on your first, graded subject or whichever course you're doing, I think that's a shocker. And really that desire to not look at achievement from a grading perspective, but really kind of embracing the leadership journey. And I think relative to what you were kind of talking about before, if I would tell myself to kind of do something different, it would be more so really kind of plot what your end goal is beyond learning. Um, where I ended up is far beyond, I think, during the course we kind of talked about pluralistic outcomes. And so there were multiple benefits that I got from the program that I did not necessarily interpret. So it wasn't necessarily to get a promotion or to be somewhere else, but my current state was um, I knew where I was and there was a skills gap. And as you're going through the program, you'll start to kind of grow in different aspects. And so really kind of thinking about multiple things that you want to achieve as a result of going through the program, I think is beneficial. Because as you mentioned, again, this is not undergrad where it's like, hey, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get this degree and get a job. You already have a job. You already have a degree. So the end goal should kind of have multiple outcomes versus just this one thing of, hey, look at my certificate. I've done the thing. And I do think you'll get the most benefit out of the program having looked at it from that perspective.
Hey, thank you for that. I think it's a very good comment, and it sort of leads me into maybe the next question, which I want to maybe just tease out around how the learning um, change the way you either led or communicated or solved problems. And maybe I think to sort of touched on, I think maybe I'll come back to you, Marquis, but maybe just go to MM. Maybe any thoughts from your side just around by completing the program and working with the content and actually implementing it. Any thoughts from your side around how it maybe influenced or changed the way you lead, communicate, and solve problems? I know it's quite a broad one, but I think your thoughts on that will be appreciated.
Yeah, well, I think firstly, what this program also made me understand was the fact that finance is at the core of every business. So me being able to, or me being more conversant with finance and all its terms and all its applications made me a much more strategic leader than I was with the background that I had. So that means I'm able to transition and communicate my ideas and be able to have them landing well from a business context. And that added really quite a significant value into my workspace. And you also do get a couple of compliments from obviously with the understanding that one would have not being expected from a mining engineer. So yeah, it came quite beneficial of my end. Thank you.
I want to say it's an interesting point you make also, like once you've changed, it's interesting how I guess you perceive the world differently and through a different lens, but also how others perceive you and how you perceive others differently. And I guess something I always end the program with is about that you might now be in a transformed state, but have grace with those around you. They haven't gone through this process. But I feel it's your duty as a leader and as a steward to carry that forward, which again is why this community of Elumni becomes so powerful. I know there's an online community over Elumni you can join and you can keep the conversations going, and there's also various opportunities to at least on an annual basis to meet up in person as well at Oxford, part of a Elumni reunion. But again, from a virtual perspective, and this is how most of us met, how connected the world has become, how easily accessible really top minds are, and sharing the knowledge and being the support for which other becomes so important. And I think for me that's probably an area that's the biggest benefit from executive education, whether it's online, whether it's virtual or in person. It's the network you build up, the friendships you make, that sounding board that you have access to. And it's quite interesting when you actually do put your hand up, how many people there are to support, and provide guidance and input. So from that perspective, I think also a huge benefit to be part of this broader community, but as past the limb, to be open to that, but then also to put yourself out there and be willing to have those conversations. Jordan, maybe just a question to you. I think probably similar to what I asked just around sort of, I guess, your approach to maybe how you've changed or how you're leading differently post the program.
Yeah, it's a great question, to be fair. I think I've definitely taken a much more holistic view to finance, and the levers that impact the P&L. And it's allowed me to articulate myself better when presenting to boards or trusts, in my example, charities. But importantly, as a conduit used between their directives and site level management, showing the data and what's driving the business in a meaningful way to people, and how they can impact it, if that makes sense. Bringing that to life in my impact, usually through dashboards, and being able to explain in depth, and in much better detail, what's going on in the business and why we're doing what we do, and bring it to life. It's just completely changed the way I lead. Much more data-driven approach now, and I'm better for it. And hopefully, where I'm working is better for it as well. I've had no complaints yet, so I'll take that as a positive.
I want to actually just touch on one of the questions that came through in the Q&A, but I'm going to just frame it slightly broader, and then I want to actually maybe come to each of you, just to get your perspective on it, because it sort of generally deals with the again, executive education is pitched at a certain level that is not an undergrad. That's not necessarily the thing to get you a new job. But I think it's about this personal development and transformation. So I think maybe just from that perspective around how you've each used this, or how it has impacted your work, or how you position yourself in the market, because my answer would be that yes, it is something you can put on your CV, but it's in theory much more than that. It's about how you act, how you show up, how you're able to engage, how you're able to navigate. And it's that ultimately transforms you and can distinguish you from your peers. An example I have is there was a conference last year at private equity conference, and normally for the MBAs, everybody wants to work in private equity. And then the question is, how are you going to differentiate yourself from a CV perspective? And the question is, well, I've got an MBA. And then the person pointed out that recruits for private equity, well, there's 190 people in the room with a similar MBA. What else you got? Well, I'm doing it at Oxford. Well, all of us have the same thing. How do you distinguish yourself? And it's a very harsh realization about how you navigate the complexities we all face from a company perspective, but also then from an individual perspective. So let me maybe throw that back to maybe Moki. I'll start with you. Maybe just your thoughts on that, around that personal development and personal branding, and how you navigate that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you and I have kind of talked about that. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I got from going through the program is I had more of a crystallized perspective on what I said yes to and what I said no to. And obviously, the way in which you show up will be differentiated, just in terms of the types of questions that you ask and how you present yourself if you fully embrace the program. And different opportunities may start to avail themselves to you. And so, rather than kind of looking at it from an opportunistic perspective and saying, hey, I can take this job for X amount of dollars in this particular title, one of the things that I felt was a huge differentiator with the program was the fact that there was a section specifically talking about purpose. And not only kind of connecting the purpose of your organization to the outcomes that you're looking to drive as an executive, but really from a personal perspective, what is your purpose as a leader? And really kind of connecting with that. And I think once you have more of a crystallized or defined idea around exactly what your purpose is, you'll be able to kind of delineate between what works and what you don't want in terms of outcomes. During the program, I reported directly to our chief marketing officer, and you kind of talk about the way in which you showed up, he definitely embraced the ways in which the types of questions that I would ask and the types of insights that I would bring during our monthly meetings. And I do think that that really eventually led to where I am now,
Mm.
even if that wasn't something that was on the horizon when I originally entered the program. And so I do think that that is a huge personal impact that I've been able to see on my professional career, having gone through the program, is being able to kind of select what truly identifies with your broader purpose
Mm.
as a leader.
Maybe a similar question. I think, Emma, maybe any thoughts or additions you want to add to the question or what Marquis has asked?
Yeah. Well, I think with on my end, the program firstly was fitting into my long-term vision for my career, and indeed it did fulfill what I expected it to fulfill, and to close the gap that I had identified within my skill sets. And I think the also benefit that also comes with it is the long-term relationships that come with the interactions and the relationships that have been established within the community from my cohort, as well as the likes of yourself, Jason, always accessible through different means. And also, I think one other beneficial aspect of the program is it being the content being available at any point. I mean, I completed my program, I think it was 2022, and to date, I'm still able to reach out and access. To me, I found it quite beneficial in that aspect. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think, Jordan, maybe I want to sort of say, get your opinion on this too,
Mm.
but I guess maybe also add to that or expand on that around what your advice might be for somebody looking for a career change or a career move. So maybe let's get your thoughts and just kind of expand on that and see what you would advise you'd give yourself, or then maybe someone coming to you with that guidance or saying, I have done this course now, I want to do a course. How can I best position myself?
Yeah, I think two parts of that, sort of building on what Marquis said, and then for me, I came from an almost completely operational background, and anyone in operations knows that occasionally we may or may not butt heads with finance because they control the purse strings. It reframed the way I looked at the finance team and the way I interacted, and saw them more as a strategic partner. Throughout the course, I actually became very close to our chief financial officer, and a relationship I still enjoy, as she helped me through the course with the bits and pieces. Um, and looking back over the years since, I feel that when I'm assessing operational issues day to day, or broader strategic ones, I've got another set of cards, another deck of cards to look at for solutions, or at different times, almost an early warning system when the operation's starting to turn, to make better informed decisions. So only from an operational environment, there is great benefit in one, it'll reframe how you look at your finance department if you allow it to, and I strongly suggest you do. And two, the tools of why they're coming at you with the queries they do can sometimes feel personal in an operational environment. It's not. They're trying to help you. I'd say the biggest thing I took out of this was the financial department's there to work with you, and they'll help you a lot more than you probably realize in your business if you just let them. And I'm sure we've all been guilty of that in an operational environment. I'll put my hand up and say I was previously. The advice I'd give people is do it sooner. I took 7 years off studying, and I probably wish I'd done it a bit earlier, looking at what I've learned and how I've applied it. I would have benefited from doing it a bit earlier in my career. The other advice I would say is, I think we've all done undergraduates or courses where we crammed at the last minute. Do not attempt to do that. Be ready to go from day one, switched on, ready to play. That would be the other very strong piece of advice. 6 weeks comes and go, and if you lose 2 or 3 days, you're not going to catch up. Not without a lot of work, and it can easily be avoided if you plan ahead. I see Marquis nodding. I think we probably, well, I was guilty of that the first couple of days and I learned very quickly.
I want to say the positive, I guess, also is from a short program, the short program format of 6 weeks or 8 weeks, is that it is only 6 weeks. So I know it is a long time as well, and it is a lot of commitment, but it is also over very quickly once you look back and you realize how quickly it went, and potentially the missed opportunities for conversations taking place. Um, there's a before I get to the next question that I want to sort of ask, and most of you touched on this concept, but I think also just from positioning yourself from a career point of view, yeah, I think what we're all saying to each other here, that there's certain things you can study that'll get your foot in the door, but it's also just your foot in the door. It's about how you then show up post that and how you work with it. So it's again, if you're doing a program, you cannot continue, and I doubt anybody will, but you cannot continue the way you did before. You have to start doing something different. And I think, I guess, the comment I can make is if you do a program, you have brought a bigger network. If you're struggling to self actualize, this is where leadership development, not studying the course, but talking to your peers, finding a mentor, finding a coach, I think becomes so important, because I understand that some people, we will get stuck in certain ways or have certain blind spots. And again, joining a program, sure, but also using that network, using that sounding board becomes such an important change agent for you from a personal perspective, which can then help you position yourself differently. But I think what I learned from all of you is that it's come down to implementation and taking action. I think all of you took on different things or looked at problems in a different way post each of your programs, framed those differently, and had the courage to have the conversation with the right people at the right time. And doing that consistently, I think, is what positioned you differently within each of your organizations. With all this being said, I think this has come out, I think, with each of you, but this is a example that one of our colleagues, Steve Moston, actually put me onto. But and it's work around adaptive leadership, about how you distance yourself from the fray, and there's this dance floor and balcony position. But I'm only just maybe put that question out there too, from a general perspective, just you as leaders in your organizations, is how do you move between the strategic thinking, holistic thinking versus the operational challenges, the fires burning that you have to put out versus the time, yeah, and the space you have to create for yourself and for your teams to actually think and act strategically. Again, I know it's a very broad question and we spend a lot of time on it in various programs too, but I want to hear how you've maybe pre the program or post the program navigated that. Maki, maybe let's start with you. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you brought up my favorite analogy with Professor Mostyn. Yeah, the balcony and the dance floor, for those who aren't familiar, in a nutshell, if you think about fire drills that you're kind of dealing with as a leader, is really kind of separating yourself from that and really getting down to the root cause of what's going on. And in my leadership journey, you kind of think about the ways in which you kind of handle problems. And I think Jordan just kind of mentioned it a little bit differently. The way in which you kind of interpret issues and criticisms, and the way in which somebody might be framing a problem, you start to look at it very differently from how it's presented to you. So you take things less personal and you really try to see things on their side of the aisle. I'll give you an example. In stepping into my current role as a managing director, there were a number of operational things to kind of look at, but the things that I was presented immediately. And so the desire immediately is to kind of go ahead and address the problem before you. But I do think that being able to have the mindset of separating, not only addressing the problem before you, but also making time to get on the balcony and say, all right, what's the broader root cause that is, creating this issue to kind of begin with? I think prior to the program, the way in which my behavioral aspect of problem solving was to put out as many fires as you can. And I think the transformation for me is to not only kind of put out the immediate fires, but also what's the cause? Like, what's causing the fire? What is this person saying that they might not even realize? So I do think not only being able to identify some of the blind spots in the organization, you're also able to identify blind spots that other leaders may be experiencing. And I do think that being able to bring that type of insight really causes not only transformation in your leadership style, but I've seen it impact others that I work with. And so the program does talk about stakeholder strategy and execution and the way in which you look at that. And so I've been able to kind of use a number of those different techniques on a consistent basis. And I've seen it kind of have a very positive effect on not only myself and the way in which I lead, but also the others that I engage with that lead other parts of the organization as well.
Thanks for that context, and again, I think, very valuable to most listening. Any thoughts from your side on a similar question, how you sort of balance that operational role versus the strategic role, and maybe also from a team perspective, how do you try and create the space for your teams?
Yeah, for instance, in my context, having spent quite a significant time in operations and now pivoting into strategic and also the finance side of business, it really helped handsomely for the business in the sense that you have a resource that understands both the technical and then bridging into the finance as well. So that way helped because amongst the team of mining engineers, there's one who can communicate and articulate concepts better in a finance context, and vice versa. Within a team of financial experts, I'm able to communicate with my engineering counterparts and relay whatever concepts or discussions from both contexts, so to have a well-balanced view. That added quite a significant value within my workspace. And yeah, I think that's it in mind.
You touched on an important point there. Before I go to Jordan, I just want to pick up on something you said there about the technical knowledge. And I think this is unfortunately just a challenge all executives today have, or all leaders have, in that we have to know quite a lot about everything. And we have to understand those blind spots, fill those blind spots if we don't know it ourselves, to fill it with experts around us and support around us. But I think the modern leader the complexities we have to navigate does make us, and it's a concept we touch on in strategic alignment or the enterprise leadership program, where we talk about the multi-everything leader, that at some point all all the complexities of the business culminate into one person. And you could say that's the CEO. And if you go higher than that, you've got the board. And if you go higher than that, you've got the shareholders. But at some point, all the complexities does lead to one point. And I know there's support structures around that, but it's interesting to start thinking about that, about how do we manage all these complexities and stay abreast of the relevant risks and opportunities. And I do think there's no easy answer to this. It's just the complexity we face. And I know there was a question about AI also that came up in the question. And I think we see that now, that with technology, and again, you could just see it as technology, but with the changes happening, we have to be aware of and experts on many, many different things. And to the point earlier raised too, it's about being able to ask the right questions to help you ultimately make better decisions. And I think we'll never have all the answers, but we can at least explore and navigate better than we have before. And I think this is something, a theme that at least I think from from your side too, sort of emerges. Jordan, any input from your side around your perspective around how you've navigated the sort of more strategic role versus the operational challenges?
Yeah, I think I think as you go through your career, you hit a point, and you've touched on it, Jason. You can't be expected to know everything, and you need to make peace with that. As a leader, what's important is knowing where to find the answer, or at least get you on the right path to finding the answer, and then have enough about you to make an informed decision based on the information or metrics put in front of you, and whether they fundamentally look right or wrong, or where to go in depth and get more granular. And through this process or evolution that I went through, we all go through, I start now trying to carve out time. So Friday afternoon, where I am now, myself and the partners or shareholders, we sit down, and barring something catastrophic, we may as well not be on site. We're looking at the future, we're looking at planning, we're looking at anything that would put the business in a better place, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. Looking at AI, we're going to be the first in our sector to implement some AI technology, being in farming, to manage reception. That goes live in about 3 hours. And it's through these sessions that we're able to do that. So it's very important to just pull yourself away from the fires. Completely agree with Marquis. You've got to find the underlying issue. And it can be very quick to just get caught up day to day, but you need to create time, whether it's weekly, monthly, however you want to do it, based on the size of the business you're with, to just sit back, look at the roses and go, right, if we keep getting caught up in the granular day to day, we're going to miss opportunities that will set us up 3, 5, 7 years from now. And the course really helped me frame that, particularly some of the modules that were working on numbers 5, 10 years in advance. I took a lot out of that.
I think it's a very interesting point you raise around and I want to try and frame it as briefly as I can, but almost this element of that, what is truly strategic imperatives for me to focus on for my long-term planning versus what is shorter term, very important, but ultimately almost housekeeping things I need to do as business as usual. And I think from that perspective too, and I know we don't have time to go into that now, but if we think of what's happening with AI, some of that can be transformational, but some of it is also can be replicated quite easily, which means it's just a new benchmark for all organizations, which doesn't necessarily make it a strategy. It just makes it a thing we all have to do. So I kind of think about it as moving from the abacus to the calculator to the computer to the quantum computer. We've all adapted to that, but none of these things necessarily has made underlying businesses a continued competitive advantage. And I know that that's slightly misleading, because I know chip manufacturers, there are a few that are kind of leading, but generally it's a tool we use. And I think this is also where executive education becomes so important, around taking this principled view, having methodologies put in place, and say, how do I navigate all of this, no matter what the challenge is I have to face, whether it's a crisis, whether it's a risk, whether it's an opportunity. And for me, I think a lot has come out through that. I see also just in the comment section, there was a few again, I'll sort of want to touch on 1 or 2 marketing things, I guess, also just about how broad the scope is that Saïd does offer. Yes, we've got the online programs, and they are building out every day, and there's broad themes around AI, there's broad themes around ethics, there's strategy, there's enterprise leadership, and there's various formats of this also taking place. So do navigate to the website and see what's there. And you'll also notice that there's a 20% discount offer as well for if you do enroll. I think the important part also is that I think no matter where you are in your career, there's something to choose from, but be very strategic in why you're choosing what you are choosing. And I'll leave it at that. I do also want to say, beyond the online programs, which is very inclusive and much easier accessible, there is also, and I see the comment was made by Dindara around one of the programs currently being developed for emerging leaders, where it's going to be a blended program where it's online, but then also on campus for a few days. So also look at the broader offerings Saïd has for in-person diploma programs, and on-campus programs as well. There's really a big blend of that. So a lot of optionality, I think, to apply, but then also to the point, the online programs does make it more easily accessible from a price point perspective. I know we're close to closing out, so what I also want to do is just give each of our panelists, in addition to just thanking them for the time they've spent with us and being so close to the school, maybe just any closing remarks from your side, sort of 30 seconds to 45 seconds each, before we close out. MM, let me come to you, and is there anything you want to share, still want to share before we close?
Well, yeah, my last words would be that for anybody who's into personal development, do consider most of the programs that are offered by Saïd. Quite informative, quite transformative. I can do a test on that. And for some of us, learning is quite an endless journey. As it is right now, I'm considering adding one more program into my skills, and so I'll always be looking forward to the interactions, to the cohort, to different other students from different parts of the world, bringing in their quite insightful experiences and knowledge, and always learning from them as much as possible. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my experience to the Oxford team and yourself, Jason. Thank you very much.
Always great to chat, and thank you. Marky?
Sorry, I was missing the mute button. No, first and foremost, thanks so much for the opportunity of being able to kind of share my story. It's extremely meaningful, and hopefully if you took anything, the program that I experienced was deeply transformational in my leadership journey. But I do think a couple of tidbits. I believe Jordan said, if you haven't experienced it, and I think many of us who are alumni realize this, the practitioners and the way in which the programs are formatted, they are serious, right? I don't think the online learning aspect of it takes away from the authenticity of the content, which is something that I definitely appreciate. And I do believe that each program really kind of lends itself to really being a first step on that overall leadership journey. So I am eyeballing some other programs that I think would be impactful to my overall growth in leadership journey, but also taking into context that there is that level of commitment that I personally have to kind of set aside as well. But really thankful for being able to kind of share my story, and yeah, thank you.
Jordan, any closing remarks?
Uh, uh, like everyone else, thank you for having me and share a little bit of my story. I'd definitely say, looking back, of all the educational moments I've had and programs I've gone through, the one at Oxford is the one I hold dearest to my heart, and there could be a bit of bias there. Growing up, I never in my wildest dreams would have thought I'd be sitting here as an alumni in any capacity, let alone on a webinar, which this course allows to do. It taught me about perseverance and tenacity, getting through the course and the difficulties, but in a positive way. You earn the right to say you're an alumni, and you should. Definitely better for it. I think I was definitely a better leader for it, and I would actively encourage anyone amongst my peers to participate and continue to participate in these sort of courses. The ecosystem of people you get out of it is phenomenal. And I've leaned on them maybe more than I should have, I feel, at times, but they've always obliged, and it's helped not just me but the businesses I've been involved in, and it wouldn't have been possible without doing the course. So thank you to all involved.
Thank you for our panelists for joining us today. I think this is clear that this is probably the first of many of these to come. And for those watching either the recording or joined us live, I'm sure in future, many of you will be our future panelists that we have discussions with. And for those that haven't studied with us, hopefully we see you on a program soon live as well. I think a key takeaway, and I know we didn't touch on this, is about this continuous learning experience. And I think that's formal and informal. That's probably my biggest advice, is around the informality of the continuous learning, how much you can learn from your peers, use that. And I think you can see from just the familiarity some of us have with each other that clearly the conversations have continued post the program. And I think from that perspective too, I definitely am comfortable. Please feel free to reach out to me. Well, the team, the Oxford team as well, but also feel free to reach out with me on LinkedIn, ask any question you want. Will definitely help, or then refer you to the right people if I can't. Again, just a reminder of thank you for joining us today, but also then just a reminder, we will be sending out the recording in about a week's time. And also just please remember there is also a 20% discount on offer. Yeah, I think the important part, as we all said, yeah, it's about keeping these conversations going, building out that support network. So hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that from an alumni perspective, but then also just as a friend of the school and platform perspective. So once again, thank you to our panelists. I know it's different time zones for all of you, but thank you for your commitment to the programs at the time, the support post that, and for sharing your insights today with us. And for those that joined us, I hope you enjoyed the last hour with us. And this is a small taste, I guess, also of what our normal live sessions are like on programs, where it becomes about discussion and debate. So you actually had sort of a small taste of that. But once again, thank you for your time, and looking forward to keep these conversations going far beyond just today. And we'll see you online. For those not on the platform, hopefully you'll see me on LinkedIn. So once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the technical team for their support as well in arranging this.